with the children of the parents that I had gone to school with.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So I had, I tell people all the time that when I started there, I could boast about going to school with my students' parents. By the time I left 16 years later, I have to boast about going to school with my students' grandparents.
What years were you there?
I was there from 1978 to 1993. 78, yeah, 78 to 93.
Okay, so I think we're going to get started now, if you don't mind, Mr. Williams. So I'll have some introductory, and then you'll talk. So I want to welcome everybody to the 7th of a series of our talks. And this one is called School Days, a talk with the former principal, Albert Williams, and teachers. But from what I understand, the teachers were too afraid to come on with us and talk. And Mr. Williams will talk about them later, but unfortunately it'll be just Mr. Williams, but I think we'll have a great time. I think we'll have some great stories to tell us. So the two remaining talks, one is paid, which is, you have to pay for, is March 18th, where we'll be talking about the polio epidemic and the building of Trenton's municipal colony in Hamilton. And that'll be given by Pat Allen on the epidemic. And Carol Hill will be talking about the municipal colony, and I'll be chiming in. And then on April 1st, we'll have a free talk, the closing summary and the findings and recommendations. Wonderful experience of this exhibit and the talks that we've given. So the reason for this exhibit and talks was really all about the pictures I've seen on Facebook from Carlos Vargas and Robert Salmons. Carlos had taken pictures of the outside of the school and its decay, and Robert had taken pictures of the inside. So that was the start of this exhibit, and then I started doing a lot of history. And there was a lot of history about the school, and that's why all these stories came out. And a couple of weeks prior to putting up the exhibit, I really had not many mementos of the school until Mr. Williams gave me a call one day and said, I have lots of things to give you for the exhibit. And sure he did. He had lots of photos, yearbooks, there were programs, etc. So that helped fill up the room. So if you see the exhibit in the museum, it's basically a look. There's not much to tell there. And if you want to know anything about the stories, you need to get onto our website to go to the virtual, where there's a lot of history being given. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Williams, the principal. And on the left, you'll see the owl, which was their mascot. And on the right, you'll see this beautiful picture of the school in all its glory that was photographed by one of the teachers, Gail Robbins, who, again, gave me a few things. She gave me some mugs and some yearbooks for the exhibit. And I was hoping her to join us tonight, but I'm not sure what happened either. So, Mr. Williams, it's all yours.
I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to discuss one of my absolute favorite places on earth, which is junior high school #1, which was, its name was changed to Martin Luther King Middle School in, I think it was 1993. Demographically, I have to give you some background on its location. As you know, it's Princeton Avenue and Southern Street. North Trenton, at the time that I was a student there, was predominantly Italian. That was Southern Street, down towards the Bow Monument, which was down Princeton Avenue, all the way over to Calhoun Street. The Czechoslovakian, I'll say Czechoslovakian area, extended from approximately Phillips Avenue, which if you were facing the school would be to the left, all the way over to Olden Avenue, including Pearl Street, Mulberry, and those streets over near, I think it was St. Hedwig's Church. The Black or Negro area was generally on the other side of the Southern Street Bridge in an area that was called the Coal Port area. That was COAL, Coal Port area, which extended from Grant School to Monmouth Street, all the way out to Hetzel Field. So you can see that we had quite a melting pot of students attending that school while I was a student there. Many of the things that I remember before Title IX was introduced, the girls had their entrance and the boys had their entrance. And it was strictly followed by school administration and by teachers. Over the years, rights organizations had that changed and there was intermingling. In the school's basement, that's where all the cooking was done. Students had lunch on site. Students had to you could either bring your lunch or you could pay for it. If you were facing the cafeteria on that lower level, the boys' locker room was to the left, the girls' locker room was to the right. My first homeroom teacher's name was John Passera. John Passera's homeroom was identified as 7P. John Passera's family, Italian, owned Passera Cleaners right in the heart of the Junior 1 neighborhood, over near Cavell and Princeton Avenue, near Eppolito's Flores. The thing that I learned when I got back to Junior 1 as its principal was that the nature of the schedule had not changed in all those years. And that really troubled me. And among the things that I knew that I had to do was to change the nature of the schedule, because the schedule had been the same for decades. Now, let me tell you what I mean by this schedule. Student schedule. My homeroom 7P was on the 3rd floor. Mr. Passera taught us language arts, English, poetry. That was my first period class. But my second period class was over in what we call the vocational building, because if you're familiar with that school, that school is in 2 distinct buildings, one vocational and the other academic. So first period, I'm in Passera's class. Second period, I'm over in Mr. Walker's metal shop class in the other building. Third period, I'm back on the 3rd floor in Mrs. Warren's math class. Fourth period, I was down the hall around the corner to Mr. Metzler, and the hallways were generally crowded It was difficult to remember the schedules, and students generally didn't like traveling, though we had 5 minutes between classes, traveling all around the school. Now, when I got back there, 5 teachers as principal. When I got back, there were 5 teachers who had been my teachers when I was a student there. They were a little surprised to see me considering some of my behavior. Nonetheless, I was there as the school's principal. I asked them to come to my office one day, the 5 of them, and I asked them why was the schedule the way that it was. And generally the response or reply was, well, it's always been like that. I felt like, though it had been like that for years, it didn't have to remain the same. I didn't feel that 7th graders need to zigzag 2 buildings. I didn't feel like 8th graders or 9th graders need to zigzag buildings. And among the things that I wanted to do was to change the nature of the schedule. And I ran into a lot of opposition. Nonetheless, the executive decision was made and I changed things. I put the 7th graders and teachers on one floor. I put 8th graders and teachers of 8th graders on another floor. I put the 9th graders and teachers on another floor. I changed the numbering of the classroom because the school had a classroom numbering situation that in effect says that if you were to visit a classroom and the teacher's classroom number was 30, because the cafeteria was no longer there, you had to go downstairs to classroom 30. The office level were numbers 1 through 20, and the top level was 20 through 30. Confusing situation. When I had my faculty meetings, I had to frequently say that I'm not being critical of any of my predecessors, but I made major changes. There are, and this is my elementary background because I worked elementary school for 16 years before going on junior high school. We had beautiful showcases outside of each classroom. I assigned all the teachers a showcase. And they used to always say, well, he's not on the elementary level, but yada, yada, yada. It added to the beautification of the school. Now, I am not going to say that we did not have behavior problems. Yes, we did. When you have the demographical setup that I described earlier with students from different parts of the city, there were always differences, many behavior problems, parents coming in. And Mr. Pardon can attest to the fact that I had no problem with suspensions, but suspensions carried with it other obligations. I felt like there was really no need to send a student home for 5 days suspended unless there was at first an alternative, which was in-school suspension. In-school suspension and out-of-school suspension hinged upon the seriousness of the behavior infraction. When students were assigned to in-school suspension, teachers funneled work to the teacher who was in charge of in-school suspension so instructions could be ongoing. When students were out of school suspended, and it didn't work well all the time, students were given the opportunity to come back on the grounds and pick up homework. Wasn't very popular with teachers many of the times, but for the most part, they did it. One other thing, major change that I made First graduation. Historically, the day before graduation, Junior One staff, athletic staff, had always held the awards day. I was shocked to see one student get the outstanding trophy for flag football. Same student got the trophy for basketball. Same student got the trophy for baseball and track. I mean, he walked off the stage with at least 5 trophies, one from each major sport and one from Athlete of the Year. Next day was graduation. And that student was not graduating. He was not being graduated. And it really rocked something in me. I promised my students and my staff that that would never happen again. Philosophy was that you're not here for those athletics, that those are ancillary, those are secondary, and your main purpose here is to get an education. And we dwelled very heavily on that for a number of years. I got a lot of support. Some parents didn't like it, but then again, I was essentially a change agent. And I made a lot of changes. And the changes that I made were for the welfare, I felt, and better education of our students. That's generally what I did for the years that I was there. I learned early on when I was acting principal of Vargas School down in South Trenton before I was assigned to Junior One, that you can't do it alone. I had some of the best teachers the city of Trenton could ever offer. Regular classroom teachers, teachers of special needs students who went way beyond the regular call of duty. I had a group of paraprofessionals that if they, and this happened once or twice, that when they finished college, I would hire them in a minute. So whatever accolades or whatever people ever said about Albert Williams being a compassionate person, and I tried to be that because we were a family, I always felt like the administration is only as good as the custodians, the cafeteria help, and the teachers. And I loved being there for the years that I was there. And I've developed a number of lasting friendships with people. And we've maintained that over the years. So that's kind of like everything I did in 16 years in a nutshell. Main thing was that I had a great staff, and I had people who were deeply dedicated and devoted to the task of teaching. When I had my back to school meetings the first day, I mean, it became not really a joke, but they knew what I was going to say. I would welcome my staff back to work because I always say that to educate the youth of our city was absolute work. And no one could dispute that. So that's generally what I've done over the years. And I loved it. And you have to love it. And you have to like the kids. And you have to be able to interact in community activities. And you have to be seen, and you have to stick to your guns when you think that you're doing the right thing for kids. Thank you.
So, Mr. Williams, there's some things here that you did not talk about. You were the president of the Trenton Administrators and Supervisors Association for 2.5 years?
Yes, I was the president of TASA, Trenton Administrators and Supervisors Association.
Okay. And what exactly was that?
I'm sorry?
What exactly was that?
Well, it was providing the leadership for all of Trent administrators,
Okay.
okay? Principals, vice principals, some assistant principals, directors, and supervisors. When I became president of TASA, we had 104 members. And we heard, as the president, I heard grievances. I was in negotiations of contracts. We attended board meetings frequently to get updates. It was a presidential kind of a job, but I had to resign from it because I took another position as director of school operations down at the board. And then I became the supervisor of the folks, the teachers and administrators that I was representing.
Okay. So in 1992, you were hoping to become principal, or you were running for principal at Trenton High School, and you lost to Charlie Rambo Ramsey. I guess he became principal, correct?
Yes, and you know what? I was thinking about that yesterday. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why, because I'm going to tell you why. There were two of us in the city who were in contention for that position: Charlie Ramsey and Albert Davis. And there was one man who was from Hightstown, but there were two of us who were really in contention. And I'm going to be honest with you and tell you why I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about it because the superintendent of schools, a friend of mine, Crosby Copeland, passed recently due to COVID. I did not go to the funeral, but someone was telling me yesterday who was there, and the person told me that X number of people spoke, among which you could include Mr. Ramsey. So that rang something in my mind, or it dredged up something that I was not very happy about. Being in contention for that position, the superintendent was Bernice P. Venable. Her deputy superintendent was Hiroko Miyakawa. Two very nice, well-educated people. Mr. Ramsey, unfortunately, did not apply for the position and missed the deadline date. Okay? That said, in and of itself, to a lot of people, that Albert Williams was going to be the shooting person. And I really kind of wanted that job. But let me tell you what happened.
You're making all that food in advance.
Bernice P. Venable and Hiroko Miyakawa were determined not to get involved in Trenton politics. They were determined. When the deadline for applying for the application had passed, made superintendent reopen the application process. And that is a fact. And I'm very sour about that, up to including this minute. So the application process was opened up again through politics, and the political favorite was selected for that job.
Yeah, that's what I read in the paper. You're exactly right. From what I read in the newspapers. Exactly right. He opened up again after he missed the deadline.
Yes. Now, I don't quite understand. Well, I know how it happened. Somebody was somebody's favorite son. And sometimes you just can't buy people. And I wasn't one that was going to be bought off. I wasn't making financial contributions to so-and-so's campaign or doing anything up in the North Ward where my school was, and, all of that. I tactfully stayed away from that. And you can see what happened.
So on the right side, we have some of the problem issues that you had to deal with during your tenure, and they weren't easy.
No, they weren't.
Want to talk about them? That you can go through the bullets if you wish, but they weren't easy things to deal with.
No, they weren't. But you have to consider the element of priority. Okay? In considering the element of priority, you have to do those things that you think are right and just. I made mistakes. I used to always tell my staff, my favorite singer, Frank Sinatra, I would always say mistakes. I made a few, but then again, too few to mention. I made my share, okay? Did some things impulsively that came back to haunt me. But by and large, the element of devotion and dedication should always transcend those things. That Trenton High School matter was one that it set me back. But within a year, the position of director of school operations opened, and that was a job that I perceived as a much better job. So, you know, you didn't get it on this hand, but you got it on the other hand, and the other hand turned out to be better. Because there was no way that if I had been principal at Trenton Central High School, that I would apply for the directorship of school operations in less than a year. So I got over it. I think. Maybe I don't sound like I got over it, but I did.
So do you want to talk about some of your problem students? I understand you were a guy that roamed the halls
I did. And
how you controlled the
see, you know, my elementary training taught me a lot. Listen, I worked under some fabulous people. I worked under Claire Schultes, who was the principal of Monument School. I worked under Eva Rotunda, who was the principal at Kilmer. I worked under several real down-to-earth people. And part of what I learned is that you had to be out there. You know, you have to be seen, okay? It was my habit in the morning to go outside when the kids were lining up. That was just what I was trained to do. So I went outside, notwithstanding the weather, I was out there. And you'd be surprised that you can get things resolved by just being there. And when I started to walk the halls at junior high school number 1, and again, I have to say this, I'm not being critical of either of my predecessors, but when I walked the hall and was present, the teachers are like, no one does that in an administration. No one is chasing the kids out of the hallways and putting the intruders out of the school. No one is outside after at dismissal. It was just something that I learned to do. You know, I used to walk the kids all the way down to the Southern Street Bridge if there was a threat of a fight, or I'd walk them over to Al Downing's baseball field over there on Brunswick Avenue if there was the threat of a fight, or I'd go into Donnelly Homes. But that's just what I did. So I had no problems with those things. Even when I retired and went back as an educational consultant at Trenton High School Central and at the West Campus, I mean, that's what I did. And people say, we got somebody walking the halls. But that is part of the nature of the job. You know, I learned from Crosby Copeland, the late Crosby Copeland, who was principal at Trenton Central High School at the time and superintendent of schools at the time. I learned from him that you can't expect what you don't inspect. Something he learned in the military. And he used to tell us that all the time. You cannot expect what you don't inspect. It worked. So
I'm
I
writing
did-
that down. I love that.
I'm sorry.
I'm writing that down because I love that. So
Yeah, I
I'm
used to-
making a note of it.
I
Like, I love it.
I used to tell, when I was director of school operations, I used to tell the teachers that. I mean, the principals that. And I never took credit for it. I would always tell them, well, Crosby Copeland always said, you can't expect what you don't inspect, which makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, it's a play on words, but it makes sense. So that's why I was out there. That's why I was out there.
So I'm going to go through some photos, I guess, from the school. This is the yearbook for the Martin Luther King School, middle school.
Hey, Carl,
Yeah.
Carl, I'm sorry
Yeah,
to,
Bill.
sorry to interrupt. I don't know about anybody else, but we're not seeing any of the things that you're
Yeah,
describing.
I can't see it either on the screen.
Yeah, we were seeing
Couldn't
just
see
the,
anything?
No.
well, we were seeing the intro slide, the photograph of Ellerslie on the left and the three.
The whole
drawing.
time?
Yes.
Oh. Let me see. I'll share the screen again. Oops. Can you, well, hold on.
Yeah, it looks like if you go to the second slide, then we'll be looking at what you.
Yeah. Let's see, this is the slideshow. The beginning. I can't get rid of this one. Slideshow. Now can you see?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you saw none of the slides before that?
No.
No, sir.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
that's a shame. Okay, well, I'll quickly go through them. I mean, here's the,
Hey, Carl, can I
Yeah.
interrupt?
yes,
Right in the middle there at the top, there is, yes, a globe with an owl standing on top of the world,
yep.
okay? Wisdom. That's why, as I'm told, that owl, wisdom of the world.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. I knew that was there. I never knew wisdom of the world. That's interesting.
Wisdom of the world.
Yeah, and smart as an owl, right? Exact, wise owl. Wow. Here's the floor plan that he was talking about. I didn't have the second floor. No. But it's almost mimics the first. And that's when he was talking about going from there to the area in the back of the school where the shops were and how far away it was. And he changed the scheduling of the classes, which gets back to here. He did what's called a pod system, Mr.
Yes,
Williams.
yes,
That was 8 and
Yes.
9, and the core system was not quite as complicated. It was just grade 7.
yes.
So that
The-
helped.
The pod system was, I wish I had a diagram I could show you very easily, but the basic philosophy of the pod and the core concept was to minimize the mobility of students in the hallways during the changing of classes, particularly. As an example, if one 7th grade homeroom was 7A, in close proximity across the hall was 7B. Okay? Now, when students went into homeroom, let's say 8:35. Let's say homeroom lasted from 8:35 to 8:50 or 8:55. Previously, what the students would do would be to change classes first period. No, I changed it. every student in the core concept had their homeroom teacher for first period. No one moves on that 7th grade level. So when you go into homeroom, you were there for homeroom, you were there for period 1, and you were there for period 2. Let me tell you what I did. When you went into homeroom, the teacher's schedule would say 7A, homeroom, 7A, first period, 7A, second period. Teacher schedule. Student schedule would say 7A, homeroom, 7A, science, 7A, math. So when you went into homeroom, you were there for homeroom for periods 1, periods 2. No mobility. But 7B across the hall would have a parallel schedule. They would have social studies and science. Okay? That happened with 8 to 10 homerooms. Every teacher taught its homeroom period 1 and 2. Period 3, 7A would go across the hall for social studies and science. 7B would go across the hall for language arts and math or whatever. In other words, the core concept of itself said this: homeroom period, period 1, period 2, mobility in close proximity, period 3, and period 4. What happened period 5? They all went to lunch. What happened period 5? The teachers had lunch, or they had what I put in unit meeting every day. When you plan for the 7th graders, when you put in possibly an interdisciplinary concept. Okay?
So this concept also improved the high school proficiency test that they took, right? The way
Yes.
they were taught.
Yes, it did. You want to know why? Good point. Because during the daily unit meetings during period 5, you know what we did? We dissected the test results of the previous year. And we said, you know what? Our kids need library skills. They need help with adding and subtraction of fractions. They need help with development of paragraphs. That was the nature of the unit meeting. Okay? And the teachers put in their plans the approach to address the subjects, the proficient areas for short time, and the deficient areas in their subject, in their lesson plans. We didn't spend a lot of time on addition and subtraction. Okay, we knew that. We would spend some time on it. Okay, but we would try to focus in, and this, see, when I say that I was not happy with what I saw there when I came back as principal, the same thing that I left, I walked back into. Starting in addition, going to subtraction, going to multiplication, going to division, with no emphasis on the deficient areas that many times you don't get to. Okay? Sometimes if you take the textbooks and you follow that textbook without being innovative or creative, you won't get to certain parts, some arithmetical, mathematical functions. I mean, you just don't get there. Okay? Because there had to be a change. There had to be a change. I'm reading this book by Farik Barak. Okay? Southern District of New York attorney. Great book. It's entitled Doing Government. He tells the neophytes that came into his office before he was fired. Parikh says you can't ever make a change or show improvement by repeating the same procedure year after year after year and expect better results. Just doesn't work. Especially in education, it does not work. Okay? So we had to make changes. We had the 7th graders in the core concept. We had the 8th graders in the pod concept. You would have language arts in 10. You'd have science in 12. You have mathematics in 14. And you stayed on that floor for the most part.
So the other thing that did is what I read was that it squelched the horseplay between classes. They
Yes,
weren't
it
moving
did.
too far.
Yeah, but you see, here's another little minor thing that is squelched. When you don't have all the kids changing class at the same time, you're not getting 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders in the bathrooms at the same time. Or you're not getting 7th graders, 8th graders, and 9th graders in the bathroom at the same time. Everybody's changing classes. Everybody's got 5 minutes between class. Girls going to the ladies' room, the guys going to the boys' room. Crowds, horseplay, you see? So when you have a structure like that, that kind of structure minimizes it minimizes a lot of things that would normally happen in a situation where they change classes. But
Is this something
yes,
that they've done now with the middle school concept? Is it
I don't know
similar?
what they're doing now, but it took once I explained it to, see what we did, I don't know if you have a picture of it or not, but it brought Saul Cooper, and then
No.
the Commissioner of Education, to our school because of what we were doing. Okay? I demonstrated the pod and the core concept to the Camden Public Schools when my roommate was a psychologist on the child study team. And he said, you got to get up there. They visited, they saw what we were doing. I explained it to Camden. I explained it to principals in Trenton. And sometimes you just can't get the rewards at home that you get elsewhere. Some of the principals initiated it minimally, but their schedules were the same as they were when I was a 7th grader. Okay? And people keep saying over and over again, I don't know why we cannot show marked improvements in standardized tests. So,
Yeah.
and see, basically, they did the same thing at the high school on a larger scale. They put Trenton Central High School into houses where the students functioned in that house, which was a grand idea. You didn't have to do what I did. You know, you have your homeroom in the C building, your first class is in the D building, your next class is in the B building. They changed the high school around to reflect that kind of an atmosphere.
Yeah, I think that's the way the new high school is designed right now.
Yes,
Yeah, so the students are not moving throughout that building, that big building.
right, that's right.
So it's
And
a
it
great
makes a
concept.
difference.
Yep.
It makes a difference. Part of the criticism of junior high schools, which is in effect the same criticism that applies to the middle schools. Parents used to say, well, I don't want my kids running around the hallways and going to the bathroom. He's a 7th grader going to the bathroom with 9th graders. So they changed. And you know what happened? They still complained because 6th graders were still intermingling with 8th graders. You know?
I can see that.
You know, so, you know, you're darn if you do and you're darn if you don't.
Here's some photos that I just threw up. This is probably way prior to your time. This is probably the 50s, maybe. Maybe when
50s?
you,
No, that's not prior to my time, Polly.
well, when you were in school, it is. Yeah, yeah. The 50s. It looks like the 50s. I don't
Listen,
know.
I was at, let me tell you something. I graduated from junior high school #1 in 1957. I am 79 years old.
Wow.
So,
These are a
oh, no,
little
that's,
more recent. These could have, I'm not sure the year of these, whether they're after you or during your time. These are photos I got from you and your teachers. So I don't know.
I think that's after me.
Okay.
Fulton, what do you think? You see Mrs. Courtney in there to the left, so she was one of my principals, one of my teachers.
Yes, sir. That's after you.
Okay.
Oh,
How about-
yeah. Yeah, that's after me.
Okay. So in 2006 is when the school closed. And they had a wonderful program to close the school. And this is part of that program book that was the students, teachers had done.
Yeah, they asked me to be the guest speaker.
Yeah, yeah, you were the speaker there. So there's some photos of the 2006 school. And then this is what you wrote about the reflections of a former student. I don't know if you want to talk about some of the things in there. You talked about them already about the neighborhood, but you talk about here about the Trinity, right? Can you
Yes.
explain what the Trinity is in the school?
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost.
Right. How does it reflect in the school?
Architecture at that time in the city of Trenton, well, nationally actually, was so constructed that many parts of the building was organized in threes. If you went into the front door of the school, there were 3 doors there. If you went into the stairwells, there were 1 door, there were 3 doors there, but only 2 would be optional. In the back of the auditorium, there were 3 posts holding up the balcony. The balcony was organized in threes. Downstairs, the auditorium seating was organized in threes. Many of the windows were organized in threes, inside and outside. I mean, everywhere you looked, you saw the religious acknowledgement of the Trinity. Okay, and I used to, when I got to be director of school operations, part of my job was to take new teachers on a tour of the city. And I used to always love going by Junior 1 because I could spend most of my time there telling them about everything being in threes. I mean, you kind of have to see it, okay? There were 3 floors, okay? And everything was just organized in threes architecturally.
Well, the school was a Tudor designed school, so maybe that has something to do with it, the Tudor.
Probably.
I'm sorry, not Tudor, Gothic, I'm wrong.
Gothic, yeah. The
But
first
maybe with the
school I
Gothic
worked,
design, things were like in threes, like the
Yeah.
windows, like you said in the auditorium.
yeah. When I went to Monument School as a student, Gothic design, heavy stone. My
Right.
first teaching position was at the Old Mott School, Gothic design. And if you look carefully, and I'm not sure where this is located, but part of the trilogy design in and of itself had portions of the building that were pointed, which in effect meant trilogy and otherworldliness. So yes, it was an education in and of itself just to be there.
So I have some kind of like good news to tell you. I was contacted earlier this week from a Stacy Humphreys from WRT Design in Philadelphia. And they're a planning and urban design firm. And they've been collaborating with the Trenton Housing Authority. And they have a HUD Choice Neighborhood Grant that came out under President Obama, that program.
Yes.
That started in September 2019. It's 2 years. So they're about in the middle of this grant, and they're a little behind because of COVID. But they're looking at the neighborhood. They're looking at the employment in the area, the education in the area, the safety, public recreation. And she says if things fall through, they will probably tear down the Donnelly homes. And I'm assuming the Page, but I'm not sure, and put in new housing, and not just have housing for the poor, but they would also have some, middle-class housing in there also. And they're talking about hopefully reusing Junior 1 if the school board gives up the building somehow. They're having trouble getting hold of the school board, I understand, to talk to. But that's the intent. The intent is to make some reuse out of the building, which would be good news. And they want me in 2 weeks to give a talk to the neighborhoods. They're going to have 7 presentations, and the first one, they want me to talk about the history of the school. So that's good news.
It is good news.
It's good news that somebody's looking at that building thinking, what can we do with it? Because it is a beautiful building.
It is. It's very, very heart-wrenching to ride by that building and realize its current status.
Right.
We had a crew of masons to come down 1 year to do brick pointing. They bought their mallets and their hammers and their chisels to take out the mortar between the bricks in that school. And you know what? They couldn't do it. They kept breaking chisels because the mortar between in that building, I don't know what the consistency is or was, but they just could not knock the mortar out of that building between the bricks.
Wow.
So, it's a gem. I mean, it is a gem. I mean, you just can't find a finer facility.
So do you know much about why the school closed, Mr. Williams?
When I was principal there, every classroom had a homeroom. We had 1,200 kids in that building. 1,200. When I left 16 years later, there were barely 630. Okay?
Okay.
All right? Barely 630. Folks said that it was costing too much to heat. Too many custodians. Too many teachers were needed to be placed elsewhere. Moratorium on hiring. Let's close some of these schools and reassign the teachers and save a dime. Charter schools, parochial schools, having schools. St. James around the corner, St. Hendricks on Brunswick. You see? Enrollment declined immensely. 1,200 to barely six. When I left that school, they were barely 630 kids.
Wow.
Barely. I left. I went downtown in school operations for 6 years. I retired in 99, April 20th. I took up a principalship of Granville Charter School for 2 years. After 2 years, I left Granville and went back as an educational consultant in Trenton. One of the assignments I got, of course, by this time it had changed from Junior 1. In fact, I was partially responsible for changing it from Junior 1 to Martin Luther King. When I went back to Martin Luther King Middle School, there were barely 500 kids in there. So that's what happened to that school. It just wasn't, according to central administration, it just wasn't, excuse me, economically sound to keep it open. Same thing has happened to Junior 3. I mean, I don't understand for the life of me how students out on the island on Stuyvesant walk right by Junior 3 to go up the hill to another school. I mean, I don't understand the rationale in doing it unless it's essentially for the same reasons that Junior 1 Martin Luther King closed. Enrollment.
Well, I know Junior 3 was empty, and this was last year in 2019, 2020.
Yes.
And I know when I talked to people at the time prior to COVID, I thought they were going to use Junior 3 for students that had English as a second language of some kind. But then when COVID hit and the kids were taken out of school, I guess it never materialized. So the building still remains empty, which is a shame. It's a beautiful school.
It is.
It's a lot of work, but it's a beautiful school.
It is. It is. Beautiful school.
Junior 3 is empty. Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's well lit. That's what it has good going for it. It has good lighting at night, but it's empty.
It's empty. So now you've got 2 of 5 that are empty.
Well, there's the new one. There's the, what's the new school called?
The Jefferson?
Ninth
No,
grade academy.
no, the new junior school. What's the new one? It's over off of Stuyvesant Avenue.
Joyce Kilmer?
Is Kilmer
Yes.
the? Yeah,
That's-
Kilmer.
That's the junior school.
Yeah.
So there's 4. There's 4 junior high schools right now. So anybody have any questions for Mr. Williams? This was a very enlightening, interesting story tonight.
I'd
Well,
like to hear a story about the opportunity room.
Ah, yes. I've just read about that a little bit. Tell me more about that.
The opportunity room was by definition exactly what it was called. If you misbehaved, you were sent to the opportunity room. And that's one of the rooms, that's one of the activities that I inherited. In fact, I was in the opportunity room when I was a student there. And there was a certified teacher there. And you were sent there because of some behavioral infraction for a class period. So if you did something or said something or did something out of the way during a class period, you were sent to the opportunity room. And the opportunity room provided for you an opportunity so that you wouldn't have to go to out of school suspension.
Oh, okay.
Huh.
Okay? I changed it from opportunity room to in-school suspension.
Okay.
In-school suspension was sometimes long-term, according to the behavior infraction.
So
But
speaking
I'm
about
sorry?
infractions, Mr. Williams, I don't know if there's a student here tonight, but Carlos Vargas, he was the photographer that did pictures of the outside of the school. He attended the school, and he would tell us the tale that him and his brother were in the cafeteria, and there was a cafeteria fight, food fight. And I guess he got hit on the head by a plate, or his brother did, or whatever. But he talks about the rest of the year, that class had to go to the auditorium and have their, what would you call it? I guess they're not suspension, but they were there that was how they were disciplined. They had to go to the auditorium every day.
That wasn't my doing.
That wasn't your doing?
No,
No? Okay.
no. I was too afraid to break the law to that extent. I mean, there's some things that I did that, were borderline and questionable, but I didn't do that. That wasn't during my tenure.
All right. Okay.
Well, I would like to say that it's been an honor and a pleasure being a student of junior high school #1 under the former principal, former father figure, former big brother figure that launched me to Trenton High, from Trenton High to Norfolk State University, from Norfolk State University to Seton Hall School of Law. From Seton Hall School of Law, I went on to get my doctorate in theology. And Mr. Williams, when I was in North Carolina, people used to ask me, why do you pace across the floor and you turn around on the ball of your foot like you're doing martial arts? And I told them, every time the principal in my junior high school would chastise us, he would come in the auditorium, we all be quiet, and he would walk at least 8 times back and forth across the floor, and he would turn on the ball of his foot. And I had adopted that even in teaching in North Carolina at Department of Justice. I will always walk across the floor, and I always thought about Mr. Williams, how he was a father figure. When I got into a fight, he snapped me up a couple times, but he was always there to show me love and to show me that no matter what you do in life, Fulton, life don't owe you anything. You have to obtain a good education to go far in life. And I've taken that with me all my life. And I want to thank you, Mr. Williams. I tried to get there in 2002, but I was in the middle of a murder trial in North Carolina, and I couldn't make it. And I mean, 2016. And I thank you for all that you have done. And tonight, when I seen your name come up on the screen that you was going to be here, I had to be here because a lot of us guys didn't have father figures, but you was there. You told me about going to the prom, being a young man, going to the prom, dressing properly, and doing what I had to do to better myself in life. And I thank you, sir, for all that you have done for me. And your work has truly shown that the tenacity, the fatherhood, the brotherhood that you have instilled in me. And to this day, I still have some of the traits of you in me, even from 7th and 8th and 9th grade. And I thank you.
Wow.
How wonderful.
Yeah.
That was beautiful, Fulton. That was quite
Thank
a
you.
tribute.
Yes.
And it's funny, I didn't know about the principalship at Trenton High because I had came back from military school because I had threw a plate down the hallway, a book down the hallway. And Mr. Williams spoke to my father. He told my father, I needed some discipline. So they sent me to Lancaster, Pennsylvania to a boarding school, and I came back a model student. And I wish Mr. Williams would have came to Trenton High and became the principal. But I know the Bible tells us that, God always looks over his angels. And when one door closes, he'll open up another. But when I came back to Trenton High, they called Trenton High a zoo. And I was one of the ones who stood up in the middle of a board meeting. And it was on the front page of the newspaper how I told them Trenton High wasn't a zoo. And then that's when they said they were going to bring Charlie Rambo to Trenton High. And I said, well, bring on Rambo. I ain't scared of him. But I wish Mr. Williams would have been the principal at Trenton High, because like I said again, from junior high school to high school, from high school to college, from college to law school, to Bible college to get my doctorate, I've always walked just like Mr. Williams across the floors, and I thank him for all that he has done. It has been an honor and a pleasure just to know him and to get some guidance from him as a young man growing up.
What a wonderful story. You should be proud.
I can't speak because he's touched my heart. He make me well up, because what he said is that particularly that what I wanted to accomplish. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to do. It's wonderful hearing it. I know he means it from his heart, but that makes me feel like the intent was not ever transcended by any matters that were not focused towards a certain goal. So Fulton, I appreciate that, and that touches my heart, and it makes me feel like I did much of what I wanted to do.
So now you can say mission accomplished.
I can. I can. I can. I see the kids working in the motor vehicles. I see them in stores. I see them working for the city. I see them working for the state. And it's not all of that front page gang related stuff, because that's minuscule. Okay. And you can't say it's not important. It's important because it happens. But the important thing is to hear testimony and to see students that put into place the things that you want. That makes me feel good. It does.
One last thing, if you ever come towards Charleston, South Carolina, please let me know. Your money is no good down here, so don't try to spend it anywhere, because if I find out you're here, I will have you arrested. I am the head honcho down here for DOJ. Please, I would love for you to come and be my guest. I'll show you how your tutelage and your guidance has got me to where I am. I'm a husband of one wife, 3 kids. I'm doing real well. So if you ever want to come to Charleston, South Carolina, please come.
My roommate in college for 4 years was from Charleston, South Carolina. At night, he would tell me about Charleston, South Carolina, and the James Island River Bridge.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. This was really a wonderful.
Yeah, it was very touching and very,
I mean,
I wish you were my principal, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Any of us who have been teachers, all you need to do is have one student testify that you have made a difference in their life. And you certainly have touched a lot of students.
I have, and I'm glad, and I see him. I tried, you know. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Good talk.
Do we have any other questions?
Come here, Shake Boy. I have none.
Okay. So I want to thank you very much, Mr. Williams, for coming on tonight and talking to us. I think this is one of the highlight of our series.
No, thank you.
It brought a lot of human interest to the school.
Thank you.
And I can see where you definitely would have made a difference in the education of a lot of students. So thank you too.
Yes,
We
you.
need more administrators like you in our system today, I think.
I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
So
Loved
thank you.
it.
So
Yeah.
I hope you get the chance to see our exhibit at Ellerslie. I'm not sure whether you've been there, but please stop by. and
No,
see
you
it.
know what? I've been so cautious about things that I have limited my activities, but since I've had my second shot today, I'm gonna come out this week and take a look at it.
Wait a couple of weeks yet for after your shot, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not right away. Wait, I think at least 2 weeks and then come. We're gonna be
Okay.
there till the end of April, so you have plenty
Okay.
of time.
No
So come in
problem.
about 3 weekends. That'd be
All
great.
right, CJ.
Okay, so their
All
next.
right, hold on for 1 second.
Yeah.
Come here, Mr. Man. Come here, CJ.
Will the exhibit be up after April, or is it just until April?
Say hello to everybody.
Till the end of April.
How cute.
Say my name is CJ Cracker Jack.
Oh my
it's
God.
cute.
I want to run and get Milo.
CJ wins.
Oh, how cute.
CJ is 13 years old. He's an
Beautiful.
old guy like me. Right, CJ? Good night now. It was wonderful.
night.
Good
And thanks for the
night.
So
opportunity.
much. It was really
Appreciate it.
wonderful.
Good
Okay.
night.
And thank you,
Night.
Carl.
Oh, you're
Yes.
welcome. This was great.
Yeah, this has been a wonderful series. I've loved every minute of it. Thank you very
Awesome.
much, Carl.
145 Drift Avenue, Lawrence Township, New Jersey, in case you want to send me that invitation to Charleston. Drift, D-R-I-F-T, Lawrence Township.
Fulton, he's coming.
08648,
Hey, hey,
08648.
I'm a state investigator. I seen his email address. I can get anything else I need off of that.
Thanks a lot, folks.
Take
Okay,
care.
guys.
Good night.
appreciate it. Good night.
Nice.
Stay safe.
You
Yeah,
too.
it was nice meeting you, Fulton.
Same here, ma'am.
It
Same here.
was really wonderful.
Thank you. Fulton, I've seen you a lot on Facebook. I finally got to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you. And I tell you, one day I'm gonna be like you and be able to ski down some of the Alps that you be traveling over the world, finagling around. Yeah, I'm gonna do that one of these days. I mean, I travel a lot, but I haven't got to the Swiss Alps, and I did want to go to the Olympics though. This year or last year to see the races and the swimming, but
Yeah,
everything shut down.
great. I don't know what's going to happen with the Olympics this year. I think they may not have them. That's my opinion, but who knows?
I thought they were saying something about September and October, but I don't think it's going to happen either.
No. Oh, well. Well, we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Most definitely. Y'all have a blessed evening.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, man.